This is the Raising Rebellion podcast, episode number 21.
Welcome to the Raising Rebellion Parenting Podcast, where we will explore how to help kids seek purpose and passion, challenge society's expectations, and avoid a standardized life. Now here's your host, Paul H.K.
Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for being here. I'm Paul, your host. Today I speak to Anthony Farina. He's a millennial, a traveler, and a photographer. He talks about how he never had a great symbiotic relationship with school, how he went to go live overseas for a year in 8th grade, and how that changed his perspective on things, how a teacher he met in high school had a tremendous positive influence on his life, and what led to his decision to buy a one-way ticket to Europe, which is where he now lives. One of my goals when I interview someone is to try to explore the different factors that have led up to this person being able to take action and choose to lead a life that they want to lead, particularly if it's unconventional or non-traditional. I believe that what we experience in life has a great deal to do with it, especially when we're young, but even more so, it's the people. With Anthony, you'll hear about a couple of special people in his life who had that tremendous impact on him, his mom, and the teacher that I mentioned before. I really enjoyed chatting with him. There's lots here that we can take away and think about applying towards our own families and kids. I think you're going to find his story interesting. So here now is my interview with Anthony. Today, I'm here talking to traveler and photographer Anthony Farina. Anthony, thank you very much for being on the podcast today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
All right. It's my pleasure. Now, I think I can actually call you an expat at this point, right? Because you're living overseas.
I just got a job out here, so I'm going to get the visa sorted and everything. So, yeah, I think technically expat.
Right. Okay, cool. I'm going to ask you more details about that in a little bit here. But let's start at the beginning with your childhood, if we could. Like, tell me a little bit about your growing up as a kid and a little bit about your journey to where you are today.
Well, I can kind of give you a spark notes of it.
Yeah.
I grew up outside of Boston in a couple different towns, Boston, Massachusetts, and we had a pretty steady spot for a little while, and then let's see, after 8th grade or after 7th grade, I went down to Central America. My mom moved down there. She was working a couple jobs at the time, and she quit her jobs, and we moved down there for a year and lived on an island off of the mainland of Belize. And then I came back to Massachusetts for high school in a town called Arlington, in Massachusetts. I got into college in North Carolina in UNC Charlotte. So I went down to Charlotte for 4 years, studied down there, and then I moved out to California. My mom had gotten a job at Apple a few years previously, so I went out to go see her and see what was going on in California. Lived in San Jose for 2 years. And then I was just kind of getting restless, and I've always wanted to travel around Europe since high school. My English teacher and I talked about it a lot, and he really kind of got me bit with the travel bug. So I've always wanted to do this, and my friend was out here, and we got in contact, and she was like, yeah, just come on out and buy a ticket. We'll figure it out. And I was like, all right. So I bought a one-way ticket to Oslo, Norway, to meet up with a friend that I lived with in college. And yeah, ended up in Iceland, and then now I'm in Denmark.
Okay, gotcha. All right, there's a lot I want to ask you about in there. Some stuff to unpack.
Yeah.
So, basically, let me just kind of set it up, Anthony. What I'm trying to do is, trying to dig a little bit. I'm always super curious about finding out different things that happened along the way that may have inspired you to do the things that you do now. Living a little bit unconventionally and, taking a step to buy a one-way ticket to Oslo, right? Not a lot of people do that. So, tell me, were you interested in anything, like gravitate towards anything growing up? Were there things that you liked to do as a kid?
Well, I played hockey for about, 12, 13 years, something like that. So I started that when I was really young. I think I was like 4. My mom said I had too much energy, so that was as soon as she could get me in a sport. It happened to be hockey without the skates at the time. I was apparently a little rambunctious. But hockey was great. I played a lot, and that was a lot of my life for a while. Let's see. I don't know. I did have a bit of an escapism for gaming for a little while, but it wasn't for too long.
Right. Okay. Tell me a little bit about leaving after 7th grade to go live overseas in Belize. What was that whole experience like? Like, do you remember your mom first telling you about it? What was your reaction? What was it like leaving your friends and moving out of the country? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was pretty angry for a long time, actually. It was, we had been in Southborough for, I think 6 years or something, so like a pretty long time. So I had like a pretty good group of friends and everything was like established. But her and my stepdad got divorced, and then she was working a bunch of jobs. She was working 3 jobs, so we could like stay in the same spot, and it just wasn't. I mean, that's not. You can only burn your candle at 3 ends for so long. So it makes it, like, looking back on it now, obviously I have a way different opinion of it. But at the time, I was like, man, I can't go to Washington, D.C. with all my friends.
Right.
Like, that was our big 8th grade trip.
Right.
It's something you have to do.
Yep. Well, 7th grade, right? That's the perspective you have in 7th grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you move over to Belize, and I know you obviously were attending a different school in there. Tell me a little bit about that transition and settling into the new school and the new environment. What was that like?
It was definitely interesting. The town I was in before, in Southborough, it's a pretty wealthy town. It's pretty nice, but it was just very different going to a place. Like, people in the town I was in had basketball courts inside their house. Like, they're big. Like, not all of them, obviously,
right.
But it has those sections of the town. So it's the perspective, I think, is a little warped. And so then I go down. We had I think a 12-room house on 2 acres of land or something like that in Southborough, 13 rooms or something. And then we go to a 3-room concrete apartment on an island in Central America. So, like, that in and of itself, but then going to school on top of that, I had lost interest in school. 6th grade, I remember, it was my math teacher. Just, like, crushed my desire to keep learning. So I'd already kind of fallen out of school, but this was K through 8, 65 kids.
Wow. Total.
So total. So it was very intimate with the teachers. It was very close. Like, there was all the attention you needed in terms of if you had any questions, or it was a way nicer experience to get back right before high school. But I don't know. I've never really had a huge love affair with school, except for like early on. But we don't really get along that well.
Well, I'm not surprised. I talk too much about that topic probably on this podcast, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about it a little bit. So, you say that your love affair with school kind of fell away. Do you think that started with 6th grade and that math teacher experience?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's at least what I've been giving most of it credit for, because that's about when my grades started to slip. I had specific trouble with that teacher for a long time.
Tell me a little bit about that. What was it with that teacher?
I just didn't. I mean, I don't mean to like trash her, especially this far out, but like, I don't think she was fit to be a teacher. Like, I don't think she understood the material enough because she could never explain things to me. It was always, she would just regurgitate what was in the book. Like, she didn't understand it. It's like, I can read that, I get that, but help me understand what it says there.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and then it was just like exponential from there. There was just a bunch of, and then we just, I don't know, had a little tiff. But I've always been a little more mature, I think, or like a little older mentally than a lot of kids my age. So I think she wasn't really prepared to deal with somebody questioning.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
yeah, no,
it's like, who's this kid? But
yeah, no, I'm a big believer in teachers, but it's not, not necessarily just like classroom teachers either. Teachers in life, and it's all about finding that right connection with teachers. And I think it's unfair in a lot of ways that when we're coming up through school, we're given a teacher, and that teacher has a tremendous responsibility to be able to connect with 20, 30, 40 kids in a class at a time, which is...
It's impossible.
It's impossible. It's really insane, given the time and the constraint of resources that teachers have and everything. And, take into account everything that they got going on in their own personal lives too. It's a huge, huge monumental task that the teachers have. But at the same time, it's rare to find those great teachers that are able to sort of connect with kids and people on a broader level. And I think especially when you're a kid, it's really easy to fall away with the love of learning just because of one teacher. That's just my opinion. But
I mean, I've also had the opposite end of the spectrum as well. My English teacher in high school pretty much kept me in school.
There you go.
He was my senior year. He was the only class I never skipped, I think. I mean, it was one of those things where I had respect for him. He had respect for me. And, I was at his class every time, and he helped me with a bunch of stuff. So he was really good. So, I mean, I've had both ends, and I understand it's a completely uphill battle. But
right. It's, you just reminded me of a kind of side story for a minute. We were at dinner with some friends, and we kind of had a sort of communal table, like one big long table. We were sitting at one end, and this other family was sitting at the other end, like literally right next to us. Right, the mom was right next to me, and we were talking loud and
Well, we had some drinks going on at the same time, so we're a little loud.
Yeah, we're just having
Having fun, and we're starting to get a little heated with talk of politics these days, right?
Oh yeah.
And but it was all like good
Yeah, it's all
frustration,
fun debate.
Yeah. And the dad on the other side, the family that was sitting next to us, he heard us and he just kind of jumped in and he shared our views. And he said something really interesting. He got, and he's somebody that he's an immigrant and he's lived in several countries throughout the world. He was born in Morocco. He's lived in Canada. He's lived in Hong Kong. He's lived in China. He now lives in Los Angeles with his family. And he said, he starts talking about how he knows from his own experience that America is the best country in the world. And all that needs to happen, especially with this current environment, is respect. If we all have respect for one another, for one another's differences, and just know that we are all different people. This is a very global world we live in, especially today. Having that respect would solve so many problems. Was the perspective from this guy, and it was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioning the respect, it reminded me of that story.
Yeah.
So let's.
Oh, I think that goes hand in hand with traveling too. Though, is you can't walk into any country and pretend like you know everything about everything. It's you go somewhere and you learn about it and you experience it and their customs. You just have respect for their way of life. Like, it's easy. You just be a good person.
That's right. It's pretty simple, right? I wish we all had the perspective, by the way.
Right.
Okay, so tell me. So you were in Belize for 1 year. Is that right? For 8th grade. Okay. And then you moved back to Massachusetts for high school. And you mentioned your English teacher, which I want to ask you a little bit more about in a minute. But having that 1 year living abroad experience, do you feel like that changed your perspective when you got back to Massachusetts to go to high school?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Looking back on it today, I think it's the best thing that has ever happened to me, based on what it did for me. I mean, I went from, a pretty materialistic mindset as a kid to, I remember this one kid on the island to this day that he would go around selling jewelry, like little bracelets and stuff to the tourists on the island. And like, he was, getting money for dinner for that night, but I never saw that kid without a big smile on his face. He was one of the happiest people I've ever met. I sat and talked with him a bunch, and he was just happy. And like, it occurred, like it broke my mind at the time, because here was this kid, you didn't even know if he was going to eat. And he was just like, I'm still, I don't know. It just, so it worked me pretty hard. 'Cause I mean, growing up in the suburbs, like, you grew up with keeping up with the Joneses, and
totally,
you just get the nice things and the whatever. And that's just what it is. But then you go somewhere that's not at all about that, and you're like, wow, the sky's really blue today. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's very different.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so, as we were talking about, teachers have such a huge, not just responsibility, but they hold so much power. And I think that a lot of them don't even realize how much power that they hold, just the influence that they have and the ability to affect students one way or the other, just by simple actions that they take, whether intentional or unintentional. And I think this English teacher, it sounds like this English teacher that you had in high school is a great example of mentors and teachers, when we can find them, we hold on to them for as long as possible, right? Tell me about this English teacher that you had.
Well, I think he was actually my English teacher my senior year, but I had him for a study my freshman year, like a study period. And he was super cool. Like, he was a young teacher, super eccentric, like had a few fencing battles in his classroom. He had he went all out for Halloween and dressed up as the guy from Saw, riding around on a tricycle. He was such a good guy, super funny, super nice, but he was a great teacher too. He knew how to relate Shakespeare and make it interesting by having a sword fighter, something he would engage us and not just read us the book.
Right.
So I had him in a study, and he always had cool stuff around his room. So we would just talk about it, or he'd be watching funny videos or something. And from there, that was my freshman year. I had a study with him again sophomore year or something. I don't know. I was in his classroom every year. And he was super helpful with my school stuff. I remember writing papers. He would encourage me because I never really did a lot of the work at school, but I was always doing something. So he was always reading some World War II. I was big into World War II for a while, so I was always doing reading for that. And he would encourage my research and stuff like that. He would give me sources to look up, and he was always super helpful trying to get me to learn more. And I don't know, he wrote my letter of recommendation to get into college. And the head of admissions sent him an email that said, based on his transcript, we weren't going to let him in, but based on your letter of recommendation, he sounds like somebody who we want at the school, so we're going to let him in.
Wow.
So he literally changed my life.
Wow.
Just, if he hadn't sent that email, I wouldn't have gotten into Charlotte, so everything would have been different.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, so first of all, I know that you guys talked about travel a lot. Was that just something you guys were, how did you guys come to talk about travel? Was he a big traveler, and he just kind of shared stories kind of thing? And
yeah, he had traveled. I think he was telling me about his trip around Europe, and with my fascination of history at the time, I really wanted to go see all the kind of war sites, all the historical castles and Holocaust memorials and everything out here, which I can say out here because I'm in Europe now. That still gets me.
Yeah.
It still hasn't fully set in. But so he would tell me, because I would talk about how I wanted to go to these places, and he said he had been to some of them, and we started talking back and forth, and I had actually partially planned out a backpacking trip after my senior year of high school, because I wasn't thinking I was going to get into college. And then I got in, so I had to cancel the trip because I got into school. So figured I should go to school if I got in somewhere.
Gotcha. Okay, now let me ask you a couple of questions about college. You mentioned that traditional school, classroom school, wasn't really your cup of tea, and you kind of had that vibe really starting from 6th grade, right?
Yeah.
But your English teacher kind of reinvigorated that, your love for learning, right? How did you decide that you wanted to go to college? And why did you pick the school that you did? Do you think that it was, was it a thought out, conscious choice on your part? Like it was something that you said you felt like you wanted to go do, or do you think it was more like in my case where it was like, okay, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what everybody's doing, and really, my parents wouldn't have had it any other way for me. I'm going, so I guess that's just the next step that I'm supposed to take.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
My mom didn't go to college, but she worked really, really hard to get the respect in her field that she did. So she didn't want me to have to work that hard. She wanted me to be able to check that box on the applications.
Right. Right.
Which, I mean, I understood at the time. I wanted to go to school. When I first started, I wanted to be a teacher because of my English teacher. I wanted to teach history. But in terms of the schools I applied to, I didn't think I had really the grades to get into many schools. I applied to 3 schools, one in Massachusetts, one in Arizona, and one in North Carolina. And that's just because they were big schools. I think it was like over 20,000 people or something. And near a city were like the things I searched.
Right.
And relatively cheap.
Right.
If I can even use the term.
Right.
That's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, it totally is. So there wasn't any, when you were trying to decide, was, your interest, did that interests come into play in terms of being a factor? Which schools you looked for? Not so much.
Not really. Okay. Honestly, I didn't really put much into. I didn't think I was going to get in anywhere, so I didn't put much effort into my search.
Gotcha. Yep. I'm going to have to send you I don't know if you've heard it already, but I'm going to have to send you a link to another episode where I interview this person. Her name is Michelle Jones, and she was pretty much an educator all her career, including at the university level. And she decided one day that it was backwards. Basically, the system is backwards. How we ask or we tell kids that they have to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives at the beginning of college so that they can declare a major. And then the curriculum is fit to that major. But what 17-year-old knows exactly what they want to do? And how do they go about choosing a major, right? Yeah. Without having any of that experience. So she started a whole...
Yeah, no wonder why there's so many anxiety attacks during registration.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, it's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, right? So she started this whole thing called the Wayfinding Academy, and I'll send you the episode. I think you might get a kick out of it, but, so you can listen to it. Sorry, just a little side note there.
Definitely.
Okay, so you went to UNC Charlotte, but you did not finish college.
Correct.
Right? Okay, and you decided to go. Your mom at that point was out on the West Coast, and you decided to go move out to the West Coast with your mom. Tell me about what led to that decision of you leaving college. Tell me about the conversation you had with your mom when you decided that that's what you wanted to do. How did she react? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was kind of gradual. She got the job out there, and we would talk on the phone, and she'd, California's great, I can only take that for so long. So I told her jokingly at first, and I was like, all right, I'm going to call you one day when I'm on my way. She goes, well, I got an extra room you can rent if you want it. And I was like, all right. So and like we had talked a little bit about it beforehand. I was like, yeah, like I'm thinking I'm gonna come out there, and she was cool with it. And so I called her from Chicago and said, hey, I'm on my way. So that was pretty cool. That was quite a trip in and of itself. I drove from North Carolina. I drove from Charlotte up to Chicago to stay with a friend, and then straight across to California,
Wow.
San Jose.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did your mom say anything about you going to join her before you finish college?
Yeah. I mean, obviously she wasn't thrilled with the idea. But the original plan was I was going to transfer to somewhere in California, go to San Jose State or one of the colleges out there, just transfer. And then I got a job out there because I needed to work anyway. So I got a job, and then I got comfortable in the job and didn't transfer into the school, and just kind of like it just never really happened. So I didn't plan on not finishing.
Right.
I just haven't gotten around to it, I guess.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I don't see really any need to at this point
Sure.
either.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
So-
It's, I really feel like that it's a personal choice. It's an individual choice for everybody. It's not for everybody. And, there are tons of people that are doing just fine without it, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of industries too, though, it's fairly irrelevant at this point.
I agree.
Like, obviously certain jobs you need advanced knowledge, but I think for most day-to-day information, I don't know that it really matters.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you one bit there. Okay, so you started working, and is this where, I know you're a photographer as well, is this where you started to pick up photography? Is that when you're on the West Coast? Is that when it kind of started?
No, I mean, I've been taking pictures. My grandfather's a photographer. He's retired, so he's been shooting for a long time. My uncle's a photographer as like a professional hobby. And so I've always shot with them as a kid. And I've just kind of continued to do it as an adult. I got a job. My first job was doing construction in California, but I later got a job in a photo studio out there.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Professional hobby. That sounds like an oxymoron.
Right. Well, because it's not just a hobby. Like he's got some pretty professional equipment and stuff, but he also has another job.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's like,
It's a side hustle.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So you and your mom were out here on the West Coast, and I should probably mention that, I'm friends with your mom, and that's how, you and I got in touch. And, as I mentioned in my email, I'm one of your mom's biggest fans, and that is no exaggeration.
Right.
I think she's one of the most awesome people on this earth, and also
she's pretty great.
one of the brightest and smartest at that. If you tell me she didn't go to college, that's it's surprising, but it's not. She just has
Right.
that drive that nothing's going to get in her way, and she does whatever she wants to do.
I gotta say that's definitely been huge as a strong female role model in my life to have that. Like, she just, don't take no for an answer. It's, you question everything, and if you want something, you got to work for it. Just do it.
Yep. She, we're part of a mastermind group, and that's how I know your mom. And
Okay.
yeah, she cracks the whip on everybody. I gotta tell you, she keeps us all in check. She keeps us all in line. She keeps us all moving, but it's all done in such a positive way. And we all absolutely love her for that. We call her the Queen E, is what we call her.
Yeah. Checks out.
Okay.
That's fun.
So you guys were out here for a little while, and your mom then decided that she was going to move. She was done with California. She was done with the West Coast. She was getting a little bit of that travel itch herself, and she decides to move out of the country. So at the same time, you thought maybe this was your opportunity to go do that travel that you had been wanting to do for a long time. Is that right?
We were talking about our lease was going to be up at the end of the year or the beginning of next year or something. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it, and we were both kind of like, I don't know, not upset, but we were just, there was something off for both of us. Just with how everything was going, where we were. And we were trying to figure out if we were going to stay in San Jose or maybe move somewhere else in California. We were just kind of weighing options. Mm-hmm. And then I got in touch with my friend. I think it was like in October or something. Mm-hmm. And she was like, hey, come meet me. And I bought my ticket. So she was already kind of playing with the idea of Panama. So I told her, I was like, hey, so I think you should move because I'm going to go. And she was like, cool, because I was going to tell you I'm going to move and you should go. So we were pretty much on the same page on that one, which was pretty ridiculous. But mm-hmm. we have a little running joke where if we start to learn the back roads, it's time to move. Because we've been somewhere for too long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So do you think you can articulate that vibe that you and your mom were getting, like that feeling where it just wasn't, something was off, something wasn't quite right, and you guys decided that you needed to make a change? Can you?
Yeah, I mean, stuck isn't the right word because we weren't stuck anywhere, mm-hmm. but it was the day-to-day grind. When it starts to feel like a grind, something's wrong. Whether it means change your job, change your pillow, mm-hmm. change something. Mm-hmm. Like mm-hmm. something is not right. Mm-hmm. So it was getting to that point for both of us, and we were both just kind of getting stressed out about not being content with, I don't know, just not being content. Mm-hmm. We just don't like to be bored. Mm-hmm. And if we start same thing every day, it's just, I mean, it's the rat race that people get hung up in. Yep. And then people wonder why they need their Zoloft and stuff. It's like, because you're miserable. And you're miserable, which makes you more miserable. It's like you sit in traffic and listen to the same report every morning. Like, right. No wonder that sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's, once we kind of caught that feeling, it was like, all right, well, something's got to give. And it wasn't any cheaper to stay in California than it was to, I mean, I got my plane ticket for $400. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. I was one way. And that was just, all right, I'll figure the rest out when I get there.
That's great. I love that, you guys have that awareness too, by the way, of being able to identify that, the feeling of not being content and the need to make a change, and then you actually going to do that. I think that's those few things right there, I think, hold so many people back. For whatever reason. I mean, we all have a lot of different reasons as to why we don't change, but, I think it's great that you guys actually do that. So,
yeah, I mean, I've struggled with depression for a long time. So I know, like, if I start feeling really down, it means something around me is not working. So I've gotten to the point where if I can recognize that something's wrong, I can do something to change it, whether it be something drastic or something, as simple as washing my clothes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's something has to change because I don't like not feeling good anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't feel good. Something's not right.
Right. And you do something about it, which is great. A lot of people don't, or they turn to,
I try.
Right. Or,
Doesn't work every time, but
well, sure. But I mean, it's a lot better than people taking Zoloft.
Yeah.
That's not the answer. So that's great. So, okay. So tell me a little bit about your trip now. You bought a one-way ticket, and I know that you mentioned to me before that you didn't even know where you're going to be staying that night, right?
Yeah.
You're just kind of trying to figure it out. So tell me a little bit about when you first arrived in Oslo. Tell me about some of the challenges you might have had, any stories you might have on trying to figure things out in those early days.
So my plane was supposed to land about an hour, 2 hours before my friends. We were going to meet up at the airport and figure it out from there.
Mm-hmm.
So, my plane lands and I go through customs or whatever, and I'm waiting on the other side, and I can't read any of the signs. Like, a lot of them have English translations, but it didn't occur to me until I landed that they're going to speak completely different languages in every place I now go. And I'm going to be the minority everywhere I go because I don't have a clue what they're saying. And that sounds really stupid because it's like, Anthony, why didn't you think about that?
Mm-hmm.
And I did. Like, I acknowledge the fact that they're all different, but to not see signs in your own, and even like Spanish or Italian I could understand, but these Scandinavian languages are not easy.
Right.
When I was in Iceland, I didn't even have a chance. Icelandic is not an easy language. And then people would be like, oh, did you go to the place on this street? So I have no idea where I was. I don't know what the name was. I couldn't pronounce it if you had a gun to my head. So that's been a bit of a shock, but it worked out pretty smoothly. I met up with my friend and we looked up a hostel and booked one and took a outrageous cab ride to the hostel. It was so expensive, and I don't know if that's because he just saw our two huge backpacks and American accents,
right, jacked up the price.
I'm sure we got taken for a ride, but whatever. It was our first night, and we were just like, whatever, just take us to I had just gotten off a 13-hour plane ride or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ready to just go. But we got there, we had dinner, and at dinner we were talking about how expensive it was, and we decided that we were going to go to Iceland. Just right there at dinner. We had been in the country for like 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to try to see the Northern Lights up north. In North Norway. It's supposed to be like incredible viewing up there.
Right.
But it was going to be so expensive and take so long to get there that we decided we could just go to Iceland for cheaper and for longer. So we left the next morning. We bought a ticket to Iceland and took off.
Wow. That's crazy. So, you're in Iceland, and I think you mentioned that you guys found jobs, basically, right?
Not in Iceland.
Oh.
In Denmark we did.
Oh, okay. So Iceland, was that just for pure travel?
Iceland was just vacation, yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you guys are backpacking and trekking around Iceland. Did you go anywhere else before you kind of settled in Denmark for a bit?
No, so we left, we were in Iceland until the end of December. We were in Copenhagen in Denmark for New Year's. So we were in Iceland for about a week, maybe 8 days or something. And then we came to Copenhagen because we had a volunteer thing set up in Copenhagen. That ended up not being what we expected. So we left there and found this one out here in the country.
Okay. And tell me, you were, before we started rolling, you were telling me a little bit about that. Tell me about what it is that you actually do, what you guys actually do in Denmark.
So the place I'm at right now is a Native American and Nordic cultural center, as well as a spiritual center, and they sell teepees, yurts, Viking tents, a couple other things, and they have a few horses. It's a really beautiful area. Super nice spot, super nice family that runs the business. And they have workaways like me come and help them chop firewood and just kind of general farm chores, feed the horses, stuff like that.
And is it, you can stay as long as you want kind of a thing, or is it, you're here for a certain amount of time, or?
Normally you sign up. So we signed up to stay for the month of January. And we email corresponded, and then we stayed for a month. We stayed for our month, and then they asked me to stay on longer. My friend has plans in Ireland. She's actually up in Ireland now. So she left here and went to Ireland, and I stayed on because they asked me to stay. So
okay,
figured mine as well.
Gotcha. So that's what you're doing for the moment. Do you have longer term plans or goals at the moment?
Longer term goals, I'm definitely going to continue to travel. I want to go back to Iceland in June and stay with a few people I met there and go see Iceland in the summertime. It's supposed to be super green and super pretty, so I'm excited to go take a bunch of pictures out there. But I want to continue to travel using this place in Denmark as kind of a home base, so I can, shoot off to Germany for a long weekend and come back here and shoot off to, just kind of bop around a little bit from here.
And I know you're kind of working on your photography again. It's kind of your side hustle, right?
A lot.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that.
My end game, I guess, for this whole trip, the reason I wanted to take this trip now, especially, is because I want to be a photographer. Or let me rephrase that. I am a photographer. I want to have that be my full location independent income.
Right.
I want to be able to do that anywhere in the world, anytime I want. I want to be able to just do that. So this trip has been incredible for me because I've seen, the waterfall that I saw in that Instagram post. I saw that in person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've now been able to see some of these things that I want to see and the rest of the world wants to see. I have an incredible opportunity to share these places that most people will never see. So if I can experience that for myself as well as share that for everyone I know and everyone I don't know, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
Fantastic. I have no doubt that you're going to figure out how to make that happen. You're already making it happen. So that's pretty awesome. Okay. I know that such an interesting story, Anthony. Thank you so much for taking the time and chatting about everything, about your life.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Okay. I know we're getting towards the top of the hour here, so let me ask you one final question. This podcast that we're doing here. It's called Raising Rebellion, and it's really focused on parents to help raise their kids as rebels. And the way I define rebels is basically exploring paths outside of the traditional. If you go down a traditional path, you're going to get a traditional outcome. And that's fine for a lot of people. It's great for a lot of people. There's nothing particularly wrong with that. But I just find that I think it would be so much more interesting for families and for kids to at least know that there are options out there that are beyond that traditional path that would be potentially so much more meaningful and fulfilling, and to set kids up with that kind of a mindset going into their adult lives, I think would be huge.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice, given all of your experience, what kind of advice could you give to parents or people that might be listening on how to become a successful rebel in life?
I think one of the biggest things my mom did for me is early on, she taught me to question everything. It kind of bit her in the butt a few times when I would question her, but I mean, it's that same, bittersweet pride of, man, you called me on it, but man, you called me on it. So, I think that's huge because it made me question everything from our education system to myself. So it allowed me to be a lot more, I think, reflective personally, because I could actually verbalize the questions I wanted to ask about myself. And that's huge for growth, especially as a teenager, being able to look at yourself and not negatively, but just question,
Yep.
What are you doing? What do you want to do? That sort of stuff.
Right.
I think questioning is super important. I think letting the kid make his mistakes. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cliche, but I mean, if it wasn't for the paths that I've gone down and the mistakes that I've made, I wouldn't be here living the dream that I've had for so long at this point. Because this is what I dreamed of. I'm taking pictures halfway around the world, and I'm getting paid for it. That's incredible for me. So if I hadn't made the mistakes that I've already made, I wouldn't be here. So I have to appreciate them for what they did for me, however good or bad it was. It shaped me to go take these advances. Maybe I had to take this chance so that something, it pushed me to do the things that I'm now am living.
Yep.
And that's huge. If she hadn't let me fall, I wouldn't have scraped my knee. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So I think that's super important. Obviously, take care of your kids, but let them hurt themselves. Let them scrape their knee so that when they know how not to do it.
Yep. Great advice. Okay. If people want to, find out a little bit more about you, like if they want to take a look at your work, if they want to, support your work, can they buy your photos somewhere? Tell me where people can go to do that.
Well, I'm actually in the middle of setting up something on Cafe Press as a sales site for my pictures. Right now, I have most of them on Instagram as well as on my Facebook page, but I'm working on a new blog. I'm having such a terrible time keeping up with the blog, so I haven't really advertised it much because I'm I'm not holding myself accountable. So I don't want to put it out there for other people to not see it. So
right, okay.
But that's a work in progress. That's coming.
Okay, cool. Okay, I will definitely link to your Instagram and your Facebook if you want me to. I'll put that in the show notes.
Awesome.
Okay, and you definitely let me know whenever you're ready to announce the blog, when you got that up and running and you feel like you're
sure.
ready to go. I'll help you promote that.
Awesome.
Okay. Today we've been talking to Anthony Farina. He is a traveler and a photographer, an inspiring young man with an inspiring mom as well. Anthony, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to chat today and to be on the podcast. I think your story is very inspirational, will help a lot of people. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me, man. It's been a good time talking to you.
All right. Same here. And, again, if I can do anything to help you, don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know.
All right. Awesome. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
By sharing these stories, my hope is that it provides you with information and perhaps some motivation to help you with your family's journey to raise your kids to take ownership in their future and to be courageous in living the lives that they want to live. The show notes for today's episode are over at raisingrebellion.com. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd of course appreciate it if you help spread the word or left a review over at iTunes to help others find the show as well. Very grateful as always for you being here. And until next time, go Rebs.